Good afternoon, this is Karen Cochrane Hall from Tarabiz Condado and clientmarketingsolutions.com. I wanted to talk to you today about the following. We're at the time of the year that everyone in Spain is doing their personal tax return. Now, when I say everyone in Spain, I refer to what I would determine or call tax residents, okay? And because of the Brexit, there's been a lot of hoo-ha about who should be or should not be tax resident, and I think we've got to have something really, really clear here. That the definition internationally of a tax resident is if you are living in a country, you got your fixed place of abode, 183 days or more per year in a place, you are deemed to be tax resident. And there's a lot of people over here that are starting to get a little bit worried because they've got one foot in each camp, in each country, so to speak. They've got a tax residency in the UK, for example, and they've got a residencia paper, a lot of them, for health issues, etc., etc. And that will have to stop because you cannot use the systems either in the UK or here or anywhere around the world to your own use. In other words, you are leaving yourself open to fines, okay? So that's a gentle push in the right direction, that if you live here 183 days or more per year, you are deemed to be tax resident and you should be opting out of the UK system and opting into the Spanish system. So I hope that that's clarified the difference between what we would call tax resident and tax non-resident. So this video today, because we're at that time of the year, the end of June is when you have to present your tax return for the year 2016. Remember, folks, that because most of the folks that I'm dealing with on these videos are British people, and the tax year here is different in Spain. It's from the 1st, it's a natural year. It's from the 1st of January to the 31st of December. So we are now currently doing, just to remind everyone, we're currently doing the tax returns for 2016. So we have qualified who is a tax resident and who isn't. And just to clarify that a little bit further, to go a little bit deeper, if you haven't currently opted out of the UK system, if you're still taxed at source, if you're not zero rated on your pensions, etc., and you haven't done the paperwork accordingly, and you haven't physically presented something here in Spain to Hacienda, to the tax office, the UK, Spanish equivalent of the UK Inland Revenue, then you are liable to do your tax returns. Up until now, you're liable to do them in the UK because you haven't opted out. What I would advise, however, is that you seriously contemplate what you're doing, because we do not know how the Brexit situation is going to do. I personally don't think, as a tax consultant for the last 25 years here in Spain, I think, to coin a Northern Irish expression, the Spanish know which side of the bread it's buttered on. I really don't think with all of the UK investments that they're going to do too much heavy and whatever as far as fining, as far as going after people's concerned. However, we never know. And as I always say to my clients, the law is there. The tax fines and the fines for doing things wrongly or not doing them, ignorance is never an excuse. They will fine you accordingly anyway. So it's not really worth it, and I think peace of mind is essential. So again, if you need a consultation, contact us, and we certainly look at your specific needs, because what I'm telling everyone on these videos, I always remind you of that I'm telling you generic things. I'm talking about general issues, and it would always be sensible to have specific, with your paperwork and your situation in hand, specific revision of your actual situation. Okay, so let's go on a little bit further to explain. We've defined tax residency or not, so let's go on to see who actually has to do a tax return. You may not be liable for a tax return, but on the other hand, if you're under the threshold of some 22,000 euros income per year, if you're under that threshold, it may be in your better interest, because you have had retentions taken off your wage or in your bank accounts or savings accounts or whatever, and it could be in your interest to actually do a tax return to get the rebate, to get the money back. So that's a very important point. Just don't take it for granted because I'm going to give you the idea of you don't by law have to do a tax return, it may be in your interest, and obviously the tax office is not going to say, hey, all and sundry, you may be liable to get money back, because if you multiply that by many 100,000 people, it's obviously working in their interest, because they keep hold of the monies that people are not asking back on a rebate. So let's see if we can keep this simple, because that's the idea. My idea of doing these little videos is for you to understand in basic English, Irish English, how your tax situation, how the tax laws and how the interpretation of the tax laws may affect you in your particular situation. So, with no further ado, if you have worked or have income of any type in Spain, okay, if you have sold property in 2016, then you are liable for doing a tax return, a renta as they call it in Spanish. If your threshold, or you're under the threshold of some 22,000 euros of income in 2016, you're not liable by law to do the tax return, except in the following: if you have worked in two or more places in 2016 as an employee, no matter what your wage was in those two places, you are liable to do a tax return. It's one of the quirks of the law. So just bear that in mind, that in the future you could be fined if you don't do a tax return. So consult always either with the tax office if you have enough of the Spanish and you trust them to tell you what the right focus is for you, or go to a tax consultant like ourselves, okay? So we've talked about the threshold of the obligation. If you've worked in two places or more in 2016, you still have to do a tax return, whatever. Then if you've sold property, if you've worked and your wage is obviously over 22k in the year, or you've got pensions from various sources, that would mean that you would be bound to do a tax return. So what is the difference? I think that's pretty clear, isn't it? What is the difference between a joint or a separate return? Who's liable or who's eligible to do a joint or a separate tax return? If you are married, the tax consultant will do the tax return for you with your data, and we will work out, for example, if it's in your better interest to do two single returns because you get more money back, or indeed to do a joint return that your spouse and yourself do the return together. However, be careful in that if you're not legally married and you're just living together, you would not be liable, you would not be eligible to do the tax return together, whatever the figures are. You wouldn't be able to do that, except in the following. There is an inscription place for example, here in Santa Cruz in Tenerife. You can inscribe your partnership, your civil partnership, register that. It's quite straightforward. You can register it in Santa Cruz, and from that moment on, then you can do tax returns together. Okay, so a lot of the time it actually works out quite well to do a joint return. You're due either to pay less or indeed to get even more money back on your rebate. Talking of which, it's a very basic concept, but a concept that unfortunately not everyone gets. People come to me and they say, why isn't my rebate higher? You know, I have not got a big rebate. It wasn't worth my while doing a tax return. And I say the following: look at your retentions. If your retentions, for example, our fees for a basic tax return start at €45. So if your tax retentions in the year are €35, do the math. From 35 to €45, you're not going to pay us €45 for you to possibly get €35 back, okay? That's very, very clear. I'm just, pardon me for looking over, I've got some of we're literally doing this in a working office, so if you can hear some Spanish in the background, please excuse me. So, in resume, who has got to do the personal tax return? We've talked about that. Who is eligible to do a tax return as a tax resident here in Spain? How you should get your, or could opt to getting your house in order if you're actually resident here, living here, but haven't opted out of the UK system. We can obviously help you with that. And just one last thing I've noted down, because I've got my cheat sheet here, as I call it. I just noted down, because my memory isn't as good as it used to be. who are we obliged, and this is a little bit of a sad one, but it is a fact that we've had a couple of clients this year. They've had a loved one pass. Are we obliged to present a tax return on behalf of a deceased person? Yes. Whether the person died in 2016 or after the fact, it still is a requirement to do the tax return on their behalf. So that was just a sad question, but it's a reality. Death is part of life after all. So I just wanted to clarify that point. So this has been Karen Cochrane Hall from Tarabiz Condado and clientmarketingsolutions.com. We're doing these Facebook Lives as tips to help you with your day-to-day and your tax returns, etc. And if you find it beneficial, if you find it helpful, share it with your friends. Follow us on Tarabiz Condado. And we'll be doing all sorts of wonderful things related to property, to conveyancing, to tax, what else, to accounts, to setting up a business, to payroll accountancy, to the contracting of workers, to community of owners stuff as well, because I'm also a fully qualified and registered community administrator here in Spain. So it's all good stuff, and the idea is what I do is I talk about things that I think are relevant for the time that we're in, you know, June, whatever year we're in, whatever month of the year we're in. I try to do a video that's related to the work that we're actually preparing, and also from clients' queries and consultancies that I do on a day-to-day with people. When they query something, I think that's actually a very logical question. Let's do a Facebook Live. Let's spread the news, spread the love as such, because it's my offering to yourselves. You may never become a client, but I'm here to help, because I've been very fortunate. After 25 years in business here, I have helped so many people, and I've been grateful to help other people in their business, lives and property transactions. So it's my way of giving back to you guys. So have a great day, God bless, and we'll speak soon. Get your tax returns done if you're liable or if you're eligible to do it for 2016. Take care, bye bye.